Now a word from this week's sponsor, Onshape. Onshape is the only cloud-native product development platform featuring professional-grade CAD and data management. With Onshape, you no longer need an expensive workstation. All of the heavy lifting is done in the cloud. Things like rendering and creating large assemblies can be done on inexpensive devices. Onshape is a professional tool like SolidWorks. It was actually created by the same founders as SolidWorks. I have used Onshape and it feels just like SolidWorks with all the same commands. So if you're a current SolidWorks user, it's a very easy transition. I highly recommend all the engineers and product developers listening to consider Onshape for their business. You can try it for free at onshape.pro/engineering entrepreneur podcast or click the link in the description.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Engineering Entrepreneur Podcast, episode 126. This is your host, Scott Tarsi, and I run CADdesignhelp.com. So go over to the website and check that out. And if you sign up there on the pop-up form or on the contact us page for the email list, we will send you a free PDF of the top 4 mistakes inventors make. I have a new online course about how to quit your engineering job, if that's what you are, and become an engineering entrepreneur like myself. And I do put out content daily on my social media page, sometimes related to tips that are from the course, so check that out. Send me a review on iTunes, would be great. And if you have any direct feedback for me, you can email me at info@CADdesignhelp.com. All right, our guest this week is Beau Button, and he is the president and CTO of Atlas Reality, which is a company that it's a game I think you play on your phone, but it uses your actual location, so it's sort of like augmented reality. So we'll get into that, and I know a little bit about him that he's into 3D printing, which obviously is a big part of what I do, so we'll talk about that as well. So Beau, go ahead and fill us in on your elevator pitch background, and then we'll go more into Atlas and the 3D printing.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I started off really young in computer hardware at 8, transitioned into software development at around 11. I'm 39 now, so this was around the age of the likes of AOL, NetZero, dial-up internet. I didn't have vacuum tubes. I didn't have real bugs in the computers and things like that. But I got really involved in computers at a very young age, and I haven't stopped since. Atlas Reality is a company that I co-founded with my partner, Sami Khan. About 6 years ago, we started off building video games, specifically mobile games, for other companies, sort of as a consultancy. And then about a year into that, we transitioned into building and kind of investing in our own intellectual property. And we created a game called Atlas Empires. And then about a year ago, we launched another game called Atlas Earth, both of which are mobile-only and location-based games, so similar to Pokemon Go where you have to walk around. But yeah, I mean, I'm in tech and anything tangential to tech, so the 3D printing, drones, RC helicopters. I've always been involved in anything that requires electricity. So yeah, I'm interested to hear more about how you do or what you do with 3D printing, because that is a passion of mine.
Very cool. So I know a little bit about this where you make characters for games and stuff, because I've had some weird projects in the past where I had to make, like, let's say more organic things than really what usually I'm making like tools and mechanical things, but I've had to make some like actual like characters and stuff before. And I ended up outsourcing it because it was too complicated to figure out, but I learned a lot in the process. And I know like there's typical programs you would use would be like, for example, Blender, Cinema 4D. Are these programs that you're using to create the characters in the games?
I thank God I'm not on the creative side of the business. I am more of a parametric modeler. I like to write code and model. So like if you were doing, like you said, tools or parts, I'd rather.
So you're doing it. Yeah, you're doing it more like I'm doing, where you're using math and equations. I mean, sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm just simply drawing a rectangle, giving it dimensions, and extruding it. But either way, it's like it's all defined in some way. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the characters that we see in games go through what I would call a digital clay modeling process. There's different tools out there that you can use. You mentioned some of them. The tools that our engineers, our creative folks do lean or kind of use most frequently are going to be in the open source realm, because some of those commercial tools are extremely expensive, and a lot of them tend to be contractors. You know, we don't have a full-time need for 3,000 characters. We might have 20 different models we need, and it's like a one-and-done thing. But Blender is the most popular. Yeah, I'm not on that side of the business. Like, my background's in like enterprise and cloud architecture, but as it relates to like anything 3D printing, I'm a parametric modeler. I use OpenSCAD. Like, if I can, again, I'm an engineer, so it's much easier for me to look at a text file and explain what I want than it is to learn some unorthodox key combo to extrude something or use a mouse.
Okay. What kind of engineer are you background-wise?
Well, I dropped out after a year of computer science at the Louisiana State University. And since I'm in Texas, technically I can't masquerade as an engineer at all. But my background's in cloud architecture and enterprise software development. I started working professionally when I was 16, building content management systems and e-commerce systems. And pretty much I've touched every industry known to man. I did spend a good bit of time in oil and gas, healthcare, government, etc. But today my role is CTO, which I wear multiple hats. But if someone asked me as a software engineer, like what's your kind of like core competency, it's back end software development, not front end. Like I said, I'm creative enough to tell people that what they did looks like garbage, but I'm not creative enough to actually sit there and make it not look like garbage. So I kind of work in like a headless space. I have services and things that people don't need to see.
So tell us the process of developing a game like this, and explain more about like how it works with location based and how you're interacting with the real world.
It's a nightmare, I'll be honest with you. And it's not unique to gaming. I've been a part of mobile application development since the first SDK was launched for iOS. And before that, I had dabbled with some feature phone software development where the tool chains were archaic. Just developing for mobile as a whole is a real pain in the ass. There's too many moving pieces. You've got different versions of the operating system that you're developing for and so on and so forth. But long story short, I mean, it comes down to ideation. If you're building games, you've got to build a game that's fun. You've got game loops. Like there's a lot of psychology, like what's going to hook people, what's going to convince them to come back on a regular basis. Obviously, we're building games that we need to monetize. There's advertisements, there's incentivized videos and things like that. So I'd say most of the conversation kind of leans more towards the psychology side, like what are players doing, what's going to drive them to keep doing it so we can keep them engaged in the game. On the technical side, because of the cloud, GCP, Azure, AWS, I mean, it's no longer a question of like, well, how many servers do we need? I mean, there's still conversations, but 20 years ago, we were buying boxed Dell or HP equipment and server racks trying to figure out how many we needed.
Let's slow down for a second because you're losing me on what all this stuff. What is AWS? What are these different terms you're talking about? I can't assume that me or anybody else knows this level. Yeah, let's break it down to a simpler or break it down to more details so people can follow you.
Gotcha. I'm so used to talking technical. So AWS is Amazon Web Services. They're the public cloud offering from Amazon, the parent company. GCP is simply Google Cloud Platform. So Google also has a public cloud. So if you are an engineer or an entrepreneur, or if you hired someone to build, let's say, a web application for you and you wanted to host it somewhere, you would more than likely go to one of the three large public cloud vendors, Amazon, Microsoft, which is called Azure, or Azure, depending upon how you pronounce it. Yeah, that's where you basically host your virtual infrastructure. It's very rare for a startup or even a large established business to, go out and buy servers and co-locate space in a data center and pay for power and rack their own servers. You can go to the cloud like Amazon, AWS, and say, hey, I need 4 virtual servers in the cloud, and they'll be spawned up instantly.
So Amazon's obviously charging for this, right? But it's still like way cheaper and easier than trying to do the other way, like you were just saying, like make your own servers and all this stuff.
The upfront capital requirements are obviously lower, and there are free tiers. This is the equivalent of the drug dealer giving you a free sample, though. In due time, once you're hooked, it's going to become very expensive, oftentimes more expensive than if you were to do it yourself. Now, there's intangible costs, like having 24/7 support engineers that are very hard to quantify. Long story short, the cloud is the right direction for like 99% of startups and businesses. There are valid reasons why you would want your own hardware and control it for security, etc. But yes, they are charging. The rates are very low if you don't have high traffic, or high bandwidth requirements. And sometimes it can be free. They do give you 12 months free on certain resources.
And then obviously it's sort of like email marketing. Like I use MailChimp, and it's if you have a low enough subscriber list, it's actually free to use it, right? But the whole idea is like once you get big enough, they assume that you're now monetizing this, or you should be. Therefore, they can charge you, and it's not like you don't really going to care because they're taking care of all the email needs, and like to go build your own email provider and all that would be so much work. It's just that they're making it like there's no other option better than them at that point, right? So you're not going to leave.
It's not that dissimilar. I mean, they hook you. There is a value add. So, if you manage your own servers, you'd have to have air conditioning, electricity, multiple power sources from multiple utilities if you wanted a truly highly. So, like, clearly there's an advantage to using the cloud. Yeah, they upsell you basically into your bank account. I mean, you can scale too. That's the other side of this is the elasticity of the cloud, meaning if you have one user, you can host it in the cloud. If you have 1 million users, you can host it in the cloud. It does, the economies of scale do apply. Technically the more you use, the lower the rate for each individual unit, whether it be RAM or hard disk space, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, that's basically how the cloud works. The beauty of it, though, is that elastic component where you can develop it with very low traffic. But if you do become successful, which is kind of where we're sitting at Atlas Reality, we're at around that 1.5 million user mark. You want that elasticity. You want to be able to scale and not have to necessarily hire engineers to support that 24/7, kind of operations.
Got it. Let's talk details of the game then, and then we'll move into the 3D printing.
Atlas Earth is a game that's in the play-to-earn genre, which more often than not gets thrown into this Web3 blockchain crypto conversation. We are completely off-chain. We don't have any Web3 dovetails, but it is a play-to-earn game.
What is Web3? I know what the blockchain means, but I don't know what Web3 means.
Web3 is kind of a blanket catch-all for anything that is built on top of the blockchain. That's how the industry sees it. I don't particularly see it that way. It's just the evolution of the internet. My partner likes to say that, the first version of the internet was access to information. Web 1, Web 2 was access to people, aka the social revolution, and then access to ownership or having some type of equity, which is what Web 3 is trying to be. And that ownership, more often than not in the Web 3 conversation, is codified on a blockchain, some type of distributed, transparent, public ledger. So if I'm Beau Button and I say I own something, you've probably seen Bored Ape Yacht Club, all of these NFT projects that are JPEGs, et cetera.
Right. Right. That's what the whole like, you buy NFTs, it's worth it. It's because like you can't fake it because it has to be verified in the blockchain.
Yeah.
So there's no way you could have a fake version of whatever.
Correct. It's based on cryptography. So you've got public keys, private keys. Your private key is what you control in your wallet. If that's a custodial wallet managed by a third party like Coinbase, if it's a non-custodial wallet, which is something like MetaMask, or I use a hardware wallet. These are just, it's basically you have the proof to verify to the public that you own a digital asset, which was really hard to do before the blockchain. Again, I don't buy NFTs, I don't buy JPEGs or, gorillas, but there are real world use cases for that, like real estate. And, if you're selling high value items like artwork, being able to actually show ownership and the change of hands would be useful, but we're not there. Most of what we're seeing, if you're seeing anything right now, because it's kind of we call it crypto winter, there's a bunch of hoopla going on with FTX and all that, but nonetheless, that's what Web3 is.
Okay.
We're in the play to earn genre. It's a virtual real estate game. You buy virtual real estate. It's based on the actual maps that, we use a company, it's an open source product called OpenStreetMap, but if you open Google Maps or if you open Apple Maps, et cetera, it looks like a navigation app. So just like Pokemon Go, you'd see the streets, the roads, the houses, you walk around, you buy virtual real estate. Each individual piece of real estate is roughly 30 feet by 30 feet. And every time you buy a piece of real estate, that real estate generates virtual rent. And that rent accrues per second. And once you reach $5 of virtual rent, you can cash out into fiat, meaning straight into your bank account through PayPal. So we cash out, quite a few people each day. It's not something that you can join today and cash out tomorrow. You have to grind. And again, that's the psychology behind the game. Like, what are people doing? What do they want? Do they want to compete to own the most land in a specific city, state, et cetera? But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what Atlas Earth is.
It's interesting. So I can see people getting into this purely to make money, but to do that, there has to be, like, how could you be paying them actual money unless they're first paying, I guess they're first paying you money. Like if they want to buy this 30 by 30 plot piece of land, they're paying you more than $5, right? Because otherwise you would be losing money on the deal.
Well, we charge $5 per piece of land. Now, in the game, there's a virtual currency called Atlas Bucks. You can buy them or you can earn them. You can earn them by watching ads. You can also earn them by purchasing products from a nationwide network of partners that we have, merchant partners like Popeyes, Burger King, and about 12 or so other that reward you, almost like a cashback rewards program on your credit card, like miles, et cetera. You get rewarded with these in-game virtual currencies called Atlas Bucks. So some of our players purely grind. They watch ads. They, go buy Burger King and get the free in-game currency. We do have a lot of players, though, have spent real money. Because we are a game, this is not an investment. It's not insured. It's not guaranteed. This is all articulated in the terms of service. But yes, the money has to come from somewhere. Obviously, at its surface value, when people look at it, like if we're spending or paying people, it feels like a Ponzi scheme. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. But it's something that the players, if they want to make more money that they put in, they have to be active and log in and watch ads, boost their rent, etc. The average cash out on a monthly basis per user is about $8. So again, you're not getting rich. You might be able to buy 2 gallons of gas, but for a large percentage of the gaming population, that $8 is meaningful.
What's appealing about the game? What makes people want to do this?
Yeah, there's a few buckets of folks. You've got the ones that are really into spending money to make a statement. These are your clout chasers, where they'll go spend $500, $600, $700, $800 on virtual currency and buy up a bunch of land in a large city to become the mayor of that city, and that's advertised to everybody that's in the area. So again, it's just like chasing clout on the internet. When I open the game in Austin, Texas, if I'm the mayor, everybody that opens the game in Austin, Texas sees my profile picture. They see my name. Same thing at the state level. So if you own the most amount of land in the state or the country, those are all things that, you can use to basically advertise yourself. I would say that's probably the smallest bucket. The largest bucket is indeed people who are trying to earn a passive income. This is not income to pay their house note, but they're using, apps like Upside. They're using other apps that allow them to earn for either walking, jogging, running, purchasing gas at specific vendors. It's not uncommon for our players to have about 4 or 5 apps, different genres. This is a game. Not a lot of the other apps are a game, but they're trying to earn 40, 50, 60 bucks extra each month, to pay bills or, maybe use it for discretionary spending. But the other buckets are, people are competitive. They want to build in the metaverse, and we're not a Web3 company like I mentioned because we're not technically built on the blockchain, and I can't really describe or define what the metaverse is. I don't think anybody can, but it's like, it's a 3D world, it's a video game, so we get lumped into that category. So a lot of it, I think, is also just pure curiosity. People are just interested in, well, what is this movement, this metaverse thing that people are talking about?
Interesting. Yeah. So there are other, like a lot of other games like this, or are you guys kind of more, you in the metaverse are kind of like in your own category?
It's a small group of competitors, and we all do things relatively different. There's several other virtual land games. They're mostly on the blockchain, so in that Web3 genre, and they're not based on real maps. They're fictitious, artistic maps that, they can keep expanding. We strategically decided to use the globe because it's finite and people are familiar with it and they travel. So there's some really interesting features in the game. Like we have passports. So if you go to a specific state or a city, you can buy a passport and put that in your passport book. So it's sort of like a 4-square check-in. There's just a lot of things that certain players are attracted to so people can brag or boast. But yeah, there are indeed competitors, but there aren't many. Like if we were a first-person shooter, it would be hard to survive because there's thousands of those. I'd say there's probably less than a half dozen people in this space right now.
How long ago did you guys start this?
We've been in business for roughly 7 years. This game launched last November. We've been building location-based games for about 5 of those 7 years.
Oh, okay. So what are some of the other games then?
Probably not games that you've heard of. Again, we're relatively young. The first game that we launched with our own IP was called Atlas Empires. It's cool. I would call it like an amalgamation of Pokemon Go and Clash of Clans. So you walk around, you find things on the map, you come back home, you build a base, you defend your base, you can attack other bases. that was, a lot of our DNA was formed, or like the engineering that is part of Atlas Earth was formed during that initial development of Atlas Empires. Prior to that, we did contract work. We did some video game development for the Santa Barbara Zoo, for Cisco, the networking company, for some of their conferences. Nothing overly sexy, but it paid the bills, and it was a really cool way to start a business with, revenue.
Okay, very cool. Anything else you want to talk about with the games, or do you want to move into 3D printing?
If people are interested in learning more about play to earn and the virtual real estate space, you could just check out Atlas Empires, or Atlas Earth, forgive me. Check out Atlas Empires as well. It's a cool game, but atlasearth.com or simply atlasreality.com. But no, I'm ready to talk about the hobby stuff if you're ready.
Yeah, so you're into 3D printing, which obviously I do a lot of that. I guess tell me how you got into that, and like maybe the machines you use.
Yeah, I started off, when it's in its infancy. Admittedly, I do not have the attention span to build a machine from a kit. I grew up building models, RC airplanes, and at around the ripe age of 19, I threw in the towel and said, I'm not building anything anymore. So my first machine was the original birch plywood MakerBot. It was a genuine...
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
Yeah, it was super temperamental, but it was one of those things that I just couldn't pass it up. The idea of being able to take something that was digital. Now, mind you, I live in the software space where I don't deal with any tactile feedback. There's no tangible deliverable. It's all bits, ones and zeros. So when I started to realize I could design something and then print it and not have to go through a machining process, I was very interested. And that's really what got me hooked, was that MakerBot. I probably only printed about a dozen successful things, and we're probably talking 12 to 13 years ago, maybe less than that, but that's how I got started. Today, the machine that I use the most is a Folgertech FT5. It's a large format, 20-inch cubic build volume. It's also temperamental. It's been over-engineered. I have a local friend who is a genius when it comes to these machines that helps me do the upgrades and stuff like that. So I'm not one of those ones that loves building the machines. I love the idea that I can design a part regardless of what it is and then print it. But yeah, that's how I got into it. I do have a few mono-price machines because they're so cheap, and quite honestly, they're super reliable.
So all your machines are FFF or FDM style machines?
They are. I've looked at one of our employees builds characters or figurines for modeling, what's that? The video game, I can't remember. Dungeons and Dragons, forgive me. It's a shame I couldn't remember that, but he uses the stereolithography with the resin. I don't have a need for anything that fine grain. It's impressive, but yeah, all of mine are additive.
Okay, yeah. I have one SLA machine. In fact, I just got the Form 3 this week because my Form 2 just stopped working very well, and they were offering a pretty good deal. Yeah, Form 3.
The Form machine. I've read a lot about them, but I've dealt with epoxy in a past life. I did a lot of fiberglass and carbon fiber with these high-powered model rockets, and I absolutely despise resin. I know it's different. It's not a two-part resin. It uses UV, et cetera, but the idea of having to wash something, it's not attractive to me, but it is cool how high resolution those are.
Yeah, I definitely like the machine for that reason. It's good for highly detailed, but small parts. Printing big parts on it is sometimes cost prohibitive just because the resin is very expensive. But the reason I like the Form Labs machine versus you can get cheaper, more open source machines is the materials they have are just very standard resins. There's no special properties. There's nothing, you can't get flexible materials. You can't get really, really rigid, hard, strong materials. Everything's just a standard kind of, I would say, cheap plastic. So if it's purely just for something you're going to show, it doesn't matter. But if it's going to have any type of load or flex or any kind of properties that for a functional product, which is what I need to make most of the time because I'm making functional prototypes for people, it's just those machines just aren't going to cut it. And the reason that they can't, at least I'm pretty sure, I can't say 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that they could not print the Form Labs materials, even if you put them in there, is because the Form Labs machine has a heater and some other processes that it does that's very specific to that material. That's kind of their secret sauce, right? They're not telling you what temperature they're going to print every material at what time and how often they run the wiper and all these specific things, because that's all critical to getting it print properly. And I know this for a fact because on the Form 2, they actually had a thing called open mode, where the only reason I've ever used that is really hated this about the machine, but if the little microchip wasn't recognized when you put the resin tank in, it would turn off all the features, which is so dumb because you could have just said, hey, I know this is the material in this resin tank, just print it this way and it would work, but there's no bypass. So when the little sensor thing broke and I tried to open mode, I think it was like a flexible material. So the open mode, it literally just hits the laser, goes to the next layer. Like none of these special processes run because, again, it doesn't know what it is. The print totally failed. It didn't. So it's, in my own experimentation, proved that you absolutely have to have the special features of the wiper and the heater and all this stuff running.
That's like an Apple. I
It's just
love
not going to work.
As an engineer and as a person who's just interested in building things and not so much building the machines that build things, because there are a lot of people that love building 3D printers and are very technically involved in like the firmware and all that. I am not that guy. I just want to be able to print. So it sounds like Form 3 is a company I would like because you buy the resins from them, you get first-class support, etc.
Right. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I don't really have a lot of interest in building. Like I'm not going to make money building the machine or anything. Like, I need to get the machine. It needs to work, right? So I can finish one job and move to the next. Like, that's how I'm going to make money. I'm not making any money if I sit there all day fixing it or building it. So like, I just want to buy something and have it work and just go, right? Like, that's the business model. So I don't like having to work on the machines at all. Unfortunately, I do actually have to fix them quite often. And that's just the reality I found out over time. So I've tended to just buy the machines that require least maintenance, but at least now I fix basically everything on every machine so I can at least fix it quickly. And if I can't fix it, I'll just throw it away and buy a new one because a lot of times the amount of time you'll spend fixing it wouldn't be justified. You might as well just throw it away and buy another one.
I know. No, like I said, I was very lucky to find somebody on Facebook Marketplace. This guy, his name is Mark, is a genius. And I drove my FT5 to him. He upgraded it, added an enclosure. But without that level of support from him as just a community, I probably would have just sold my folder check. They went out of business around the pandemic. But I did, at some point when I have more space, I know the listeners can't see it, but behind me, I've got this massive video game collection. I don't have a workshop anymore, but I'd like to buy a commercially supported 3D printer. You know, I can't remember the names. There's a bunch of large format printers out there, but when you get the quality,
you're thinking of like Stratasys or 3D systems.
They're like $20,000-$30,000, and I'm like,
right.
Look.
Yeah.
The most prints I printed were actually for my fiance. They were flower pots. They were little succulents, and I was like a factory. I was the happiest I've ever been because the machine probably printed 20, 30, 40 of these things flawlessly. But again, I'd love to have one of those commercially supported printers. I've seen some that do like welding and laser sintering with metals, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, if I have some free time and some disposable income in the future, I'd love it. But the monoprice printers for me, I've printed probably 2,000 parts for RC cars, remote control tanks, anything you can think of. And a lot of it I just download from Thingiverse or other websites. Maybe about 40 or 50 of those parts that I engineer myself using OpenSCAD, but monoprice is super reliable.
I could never justify buying one of those Stratasys. I mean, two main reasons. One is, I mean, I don't know if I'd ever sell enough parts to make back the investment. But even if I did that, their closed source materials is even more expensive than Formlabs to the point where there's no way I can even sell each individual part with enough margin left over after paying for the materials. So really the only market they have are like giant companies that just basically don't give a crap that they're paying way more than they need. Like, for example, an FDM printer from Ultimaker is probably better than their machine. It costs 10 to 20 times less and is open source, but like I guess of a brand name. So like a $1 billion company doesn't care they're spending 50,000 and they could have spent 5. Like it's like zero difference to them. Yeah, so that's the market that those companies go after because they realize they also offer like support. Like they'll actually have somebody come there and fix it versus like, yeah, Ultimaker, they can't, and Prusa, these companies, they can't send somebody to your house when you bought a $1,000 machine or a $500 machine.
Yeah, that's my goal.
So it's like that's just like most people that do what I do not buy the machines because there's no way they could, make any money, profitably.
Yeah, it's that recurring revenue and support. Like I said, when I retire, maybe I'd love to have, like, it's like these woodworkers. I mean, I doubt a lot of them have support agreements on their CNC machines, but I just don't have the attention span. When a machine doesn't work, I feel just really just pissed off. I'll troubleshoot it. Obviously, I can get things to work most of the time, but the support is what attracted me. But you're absolutely right. The price tag is obnoxious.
When you brought your machine to that guy's house, how much did he charge you to fix it?
He charged me, I think, $150, and that was about six. The guy clearly does it. He's a passion guy. He was up for the challenge, but I thought it was a very fair rate for the amount of time that he spent. The last thing he did was that he built an entire enclosure, cut it out of corrugated plastic. It's not something that's super high tech, but it worked really well for my needs to maintain temperature. But I've also done a few things where if he upgraded my printer head, I'd, give him the equivalent of the printer head, and he's done it that way. But the guy when you go to his house, he has a garage full of 3D printers. Like, this is his life after hours, because his full-time job is not this. But yeah, I mean, it was a reasonable price in my mind.
Yeah. So like, you spent like a couple hours fixing it and charged you $150. That's not too bad, I guess.
No, I mean, look, I could have probably did it, but like I said, I don't have the attention span. This guy he's got so many like spare parts and all the tools, and he's been in this for a very long time, because more often than not, you start by going to the forum, you're reading about common issues that are similar, you start taking things apart, but the monoprice machines really aren't very end user configurable. The FT5 I'm using a controller. It's a Wi-Fi controller called the Duet 2. I think they just recently came out with a 3, but that made things a little easier because it has a GUI that's web-based. You can update the config and not have to drop into a serial console. It was just a nightmare playing with it. And I do this as a day job. The last thing I want to do when I come home to print something is to have to write software, like upgrade firmware.
Right. Yeah. It'd be nice to find a guy like you found, because like, I've had some times where I just couldn't fix it. And like for $150, even on a $700 machine, like that's worth paying. But if it gets beyond 50% of the value of the machine, then I probably should just toss it or sell it for parts and just buy something else or buy a new one. Yeah. I guess it's just finding a guy like that is like super lucky, because most people are not going to work on it for that cheap, right? It's just not worth their time. And I guess because he just enjoys doing it, that's why he did it for such a low price.
Yeah, I mean, I've established, we're friends now. When I first met him, I was just a random guy on the internet looking to, honestly, if I'm not mistaken, I think I had listed it for sale, and he reached out and said, "What's wrong with it?" And I said, "There's really nothing wrong with it, but the company has gone, out of business, and I just don't have the time to upgrade." And he was like, "Well, how about I upgrade it for you, and you can," I was like, "Well, hell, this sounds like a match made in heaven." Yeah, I mean, I got really lucky with this gentleman. Anytime I have questions, he's always Johnny on the spot. He's very active actually on the Facebook group for Folder Tech now that they're out of business. So he's probably saved more than just one person's life.
Oh, well, yeah. Because anytime I hear a guy like that, I just think, what's the catch? Where's the scam here? Because it doesn't make any sense.
You have to meet Mark. You have to meet him. You have to see his garage. He's like, we could talk for hours about anything additive manufacturing. He's big in the off-roading, like climbing trucks and things like that. But he's just one of those genuine Texans that he's extremely intelligent. And I mean, I was just on the internet trying to find somebody to help with the machine or liquidate it. But yeah, not everybody's going to be that lucky, but he certainly saved my butt a few times with this Folder Tech. So I do look forward to buying one of these commercial machines in the future, but I just don't have the time nor the disposable income to justify it. Like you were saying, it's obnoxious.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't have much left. Usually I have two last questions here for you. One is, what is your number one tip for listeners?
Number one tip for listeners. I'm a technologist. I mean, it can be kind of daunting if you want to start a business that requires custom software. I know a lot of folks will recommend people jumping in and learning how to write software. The fact of the matter is it'll take you 5 to 10 years to get to a point where you can actually operationalize an idea in such a way that users can use it and you can scale it. So, my tip is, if you're an entrepreneur and you do need custom software, don't go down the rabbit hole and try to teach yourself Python or PHP. Go to third-party marketplaces like Upwork or Fiverr. It's not guaranteed that you won't get, the runaround, or you won't get, practically robbed. But like, I have a lot of friends that are just like, oh, I'm going to learn this. And then sure enough, 4 months later, they're like, hey, do you know anybody that can help me? I know that's not really a tip, but at the end of the day, it's like, go to the internet, ask the community. Reddit is a good place. It's toxic at times, but ask a lot of questions, but try to find somebody. Like if you're starting a business and you're not the technical co-founder, the essence of the business, its ability to succeed is contingent upon you having a technical co-founder. That's all of the ventures I've been a part of. I've been the technical co-founder, and my partner has had either the ideas or the marketing chops. But I've seen very few people succeed without a technical co-founder.
Okay, that's good advice. And lastly, you had mentioned some of your ways to get in contact with you, but we'll just reiterate it here. What's the best way for people to reach out if they want to ask you something? Nowadays,
it's LinkedIn. Just go to LinkedIn, search for Beau Button. That's BeauButton. I'm with Atlas Reality. I respond to almost all of the messages. Unless you're trying to sell me, offshore remote development, please don't. But that's the best place to go. I do have a little monthly, or it used to be weekly, but a video series that I post updates about Web3, crypto, video game development. So if you're interested in learning about the tech, that's a good place. And like I said, don't be shy. I love talking, obviously. So shoot me a message if you have a question about software development. Scott, you're probably a better connection if they have questions about additive manufacturing or any type of CAD. But yeah, don't be shy. I like to chat.
Cool. All right, Beau. Well, thanks for coming on the show, and we'll catch everyone next time.
Excellent. You have a good day. Thank you, Scott.
Now a word from this week's sponsor, Onshape. Onshape is the only cloud-native product development platform featuring professional-grade CAD and data management. With Onshape, you no longer need an expensive workstation. All of the heavy lifting is done in the cloud. Things like rendering and creating large assemblies can be done on inexpensive devices. Onshape is a professional tool like SolidWorks. It was actually created by the same founders as SolidWorks. I have used Onshape, and it feels just like SolidWorks with all the same commands. So if you're a current SolidWorks user, it's a very easy transition. I highly recommend all the engineers and product developers listening to consider Onshape for their business. You can try it for free at onshape.pro/engineering entrepreneur podcast, or click the link in the description.